How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Ganji. Welcome to another episode of Chair Talk. Guys, we are going to revisit the Goodman case. I read the 41-page complaint. It was a house of horror in Wisconsin. If you guys are not familiar with this case, because I'm about ready to break down this 41-page complaint, look at this quick little news report. Here we go.
The fourth and final suspect in what authorities are calling one of the worst child abuse cases they've seen has now been charged.
Melissa Goodman made her initial appearance in Outagamie County Court just this afternoon. Fox 11's Emily Matassic has been following this case in court and the appearance of all four suspects, actually. She joins us now in the studio with what happened next. So many people are paying attention to this story.
Yeah, obviously, Melissa Goodman was charged today, now facing several child neglect charges, just like those other three suspects. Her bail today was set at $150,000 cash. Now, Goodman, her husband Walter, and her daughter Savannah Lefevre, along with Lefevre's partner Kayla Stemler, were arrested earlier this week. The four are accused of starving Walter Goodman's 14-year-old daughter, who weighed only 35 pounds when she was removed from the home back in August. At the time, Walter Goodman called 911 to report the girl was lethargic, almost comatose. The first officer to arrive at the home thought because of the child's size, she was only 6 or 7 years old. Following hospitalization and continued treatment, we've learned the victim is doing much better. She's out of the hospital and in school again. The court commissioner setting a high cash bond based on the details in the criminal complaint.
Quite frankly, we have some incredibly disturbing allegations before the court today. According to the allegations, the alleged victim in this particular matter, quite frankly, was living in a house of horrors. But for the grace of God, she did not die. And according to the penalty section, it looks like the defendant is facing over 100 years in prison.
Preliminary hearings for Walter Goodman and Stemler are set for Wednesday, and Lefevre's is set for next Thursday. Now, in addition to the victim, there was another child in the home identified as Melissa Goodman's son. She is prohibited from having unsupervised visits with him or any other child under the age of 18.
All right, guys, this case is, thank God the young girl, let me remove this fair use, has survived. She's doing better from what I'm hearing. If you guys have been following this channel, we almost could have had another Jacqueline Torres Garcia case, Mimi. I mean, there's a lot of things here that are similar. I talked about a little bit about this case yesterday, but I was just getting introduced to the case. Now I have a little bit more. I read the whole 41-page criminal complaint. And it's the state. I read the state versus Walter S. Goodman III. So let me just read you what I got, my perspective, because there's a lot here. So this is a story about a child who vanished, not into the woods, not into a city, but into a home full of adults who were supposed to protect her. A child who became invisible, not because she ran, but because every system that should have seen her stopped looking. And we're talking about the homeschool system. It's a lot different in Wisconsin. There's not that much oversight when it comes to homeschool. And we'll talk about that. We definitely discussed that yesterday. So if you guys check out the video from yesterday, you'll see we visited it. And when a child becomes invisible, the only witnesses to her suffering are the people behind the closed door. That's what happened to MJG, a 14-year-old girl who weighed 35 pounds the day first responders found her. A teenager the size of a kindergartner, a child who should have been starting high school, but instead was lying limp on a porch in Oneida, Wisconsin, barely hanging on. Every detail you're about to hear either comes directly from the criminal complaint or from verified law and reporting around it. All right, so a father gets custody and a child begins to disappear. So let's go back to 2020. It's around COVID. In May of 2020, a family court judge grants sole custody of MJG to her father, Walter S. Goodman III, after her mother goes to jail. The complaint doesn't spell out what the mother did or how long she was sentenced for. It just tells us the result. Mother went to jail. He is giving MJG. That's the daughter. A 9-year-old girl is moved into a crowded, medically fragile household where no one is really in a position to parent. So let's look at these 4. There they are. It's Melissa Goodman. She's the one that just got the charge. The other 3 was already charged. That's Walter Goodman. They call him Sam as well. The one on the right, that's Savannah. That's Melissa Goodman's daughter. And then you got Savannah's girlfriend to the right of her. That's Kayla. This is just truly a house of horrors. It truly is what it's labeled. It's a house of horror. So inside the home, let's do that again. Sorry. Is Walter. So that's him right there. The guy with the glasses. He's dealing with end-stage liver disease. His wife, Melissa, that's on his left, is disabled and often bedbound. She's a bigger woman. Melissa's adult daughter, Savannah, and Melissa's biological son and Walter's teenage stepson, that's NM. He was born 12/18/2009. And by August of 2021, we got Kayla, Savannah's partner, and that's the girl on the right. Before MJG arrives, the layout is clear in the complaint. Walter and Melissa share one bedroom. Savannah has her own bedroom. And M, the stepson, Melissa's son, has his own bedroom. When MJG moves in, she originally shares NM's room. There are bunk beds. MJG is on the top bunk. NM is on the bottom. So again, and MJG is Walter's daughter. And NM would technically be his stepson, but it's Melissa Goodman, Walter's wife's son. Eventually, NM moves out of the shared room and starts sleeping on the couch in the living room, and MJG is left alone in the bedroom. That shift from sharing space with a sibling to being the one left in the room is a small sign of what's coming. Her world is shrinking. Her last normal medical appointment, September of 2020. Her last in-person schooling, early 2020, when COVID pushes classes online. So again, this is around COVID. For most kids, the pandemic created distance. For MJG, it created disappearance. And the question the complaint forces us to ask is, and this is the arrest complaint, once she moved into Walter's home, who outside that house was watching out for her? And by 2021, the answer is no one. No one was watching out for her. Let's talk about the school. This was the first system to lose her. This is around 2019 and 2025. So before Walter gets custody, the school knows a very different child. Her 3rd grade teacher, Keta Quiver, describes MJG as friendly, talkative, more active than other kids, healthy in appearance, eating normally. Importantly, the complaint notes the teacher was not aware of MJG being autistic, and that will come into play. And MJG was not enrolled in special education. That's going to be important, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But basically, when Walter decides to call 911 to help his daughter, because it looks like the starving that they were doing is starting to get a little too far. She's appearing lethargic, so he calls 911, but he tries to set the narrative. Tries to play some BS that his daughter's autistic and she refuses to eat, because he's trying to create the narrative, because first responders, they're going to see what she looks like and they're going to question him. So he's already trying to create the narrative. At one point, they were asking what is her weight over the phone, and he pretty much didn't want to give that, saying she was 14, but she weighed 35 pounds. An average 14-year-old should be what, 110, 115 maybe? Definitely almost triple what 35 pounds is. So we have a baseline, right? So in a normal school setting with structure, meals, and peers, nothing about MJG screamed severe special needs. She was just a kid. After custody shifts to Walter, 2019 and 2020, school goes virtual due to COVID. 2020 to 2021, she's enrolled in virtual 4th grade in Seymour. After that, she is withdrawn for homeschooling. From From that point on, no attendance records, no testing, no grades, no curriculum documentation, no further teacher contact. We're talking about mandated first responders are now out of her life. So there is no one to protect her. And we've seen this with Jacqueline Torres Garcia, Mimi. When interviewed in 2025, MJG says she's doing normal 5th grade stuff, even though she should be entering 9th grade by that age. Meanwhile, in Wisconsin, homeschooling is almost entirely self-certified. Parents file a simple PI 1206 form once a year. I showed you this in the video yesterday. They certify they're providing 875 hours of instruction in basic subjects. No one checks the home. No one verifies lessons or progress. DPI and local districts have no authority to routinely monitor or inspect. Once a child is marked as homeschooled, there's no built-in system to see if they're actually learning or alive. So what happened with MJG isn't real homeschooling. It's educational abandonment protected by a paperwork shell. I want to talk about the medical care and how it stopped for 5 years because no one saw her. So after September 2020, the complaint is blunt. MJG does not see a doctor again. Not for routine checkups, vaccines, nutrition, sleep issues, behavioral concerns, the autism Walter claims, the extreme weight loss that she clearly experienced, nothing. And here's a critical under-discussed detail. The rest of the family does receive medical care. Walter sees doctors because he has the liver disease. NM, that is Melissa Goodman's son, the stepson of Walter. He gets cancer treatment because he has cancer. And medical visits are happening, just not for her. Walter tells investigators he didn't get around to changing her primary doctor, and he thought she was healthy. But the complaint makes a larger point. With no school and no doctor, MJG effectively disappears from the two systems most likely to spot neglect. No teachers, no nurses, no mandated reporters. For the next several years, everything that happens to her happens off the radar. Happens off the radar. Let's talk about the house. So it's a house under stress, and the child takes the blame. We saw this with Jacqueline Mimi Torres. We saw this. Starting to see a pattern here. By 2021 to 2022, the home is under heavy strain. Walter's liver failure, Melissa's disability, that's the wife on the left. Savannah and Kayla. Kayla was the only one noted with outside employment, but now they're living together as a couple. And NM, the son, is juggling adolescence and then his own cancer diagnosis. When NM starts cancer treatment, the complaint notes that Savannah and Kayla take on more of MJG's daily care. That's the two on the right. Melissa's daughter and the daughter, I guess you want to say lover. That means the adults with the least parenting experience and some of the harshest attitudes towards MJG become her primary caregiver. At the same time, Melissa, often from her bed, uses her phone to direct feeding schedules, assign bathroom trips, order doors locked, hand out punishments right from her bed. And we'll see that on the text. All related to MJG. So even when she physically can't move easily, she still controls the system. Inside the household, MJG gradually becomes a chore, a problem to be managed, a job people complain about, and a person who draws eye rolls, not empathy. And psychologically, something dangerous forms. All four adults begin reinforcing each other's frustration and contempt. Again, we saw this with Nanita, Carla, and Jacqueline the aunt, for the Garcia Torres case. No one in the home says we're being too hard on her. Maybe she needs a doctor. Or this feels wrong. Instead, they echo each other's anger. Their language gets harsher. Their punishment grows more normalized. Neglect doesn't show up as one person losing control. It shows up as a shared culture. It becomes normalized. How scary is that? It becomes normalized. And I'm definitely going to break this down with Siobhan Scott probably Wednesday. We're going to talk about this dynamic. Let's talk about the text messages. When your own words become evidence, because that's a big thing on this case. The texts that they shared with each other amongst the four. The texts are the strength of this case. Here's why. The complaint's most chilling section isn't the lab work. It's the group text. These aren't polished police statements. They're private messages they never expected a jury to see. And that's what's hopefully going to happen. They reveal three core things. How they talked about MJG, how they controlled her, and how they reinforced each other's cruelty. First set of texts, I kind of grouped them. So it's not in any particular order. I just want to kind of bring about the core message from some of these texts that I was able to group. So one thing I noticed is the language in the text takes her from a child to an object. Instead of calling her by name, they use dummy, stupid, peanut brain, piece of shit, that kid, she's pissing me off. God, I hate her. What makes this more than just ugly talk? These words show up during routine planning, not just in blow-up moments. Got an example. Make sure you get dummy fed or have stupid do it. This is routine. This is normal. When insults are embedded in logistics, it means the contempt is constant, not episodic. Language has power. Over time, calling a child stupid helps you believe that she deserves less. She's an object to them. That's all she is. There's no empathy here. You don't have empathy for objects. Food as control. I saw a section there. So publicly, this isn't about food as control, not care. Publicly, they tell investigators she gets 3 meals a day. She just doesn't like to eat. But the texts tell a different story. From Melissa to NM. So that's Melissa to her son. I'm going to need your help when I have to feed MJG later. Make sure to get dummy fed and the dogs fed. From Melissa to Savannah. So Melissa, mom to her daughter. Planning specific feeding times. Talking about when she hasn't eaten yet. Deciding when, if she'll eat. Other texts show her plate being moved away so she can't take extra bites. Snacks being denied because she hasn't earned them. Frustration when she tries to get more food than they think she should have. And then in almost a throwaway line, someone texts, she's just so skinny. I'm scared she's going to die for real. That's not ignorance. That's awareness. The hospital later confirms she eats eagerly. She has no swallowing issues. Once fed and hydrated, she gains weight and functions within age expectations. She doesn't have an eating disorder, they've determined. They determined that she's starving. Let's talk about the locked doors and permission to move, again, revealed in text. The complaint ties the physical evidence to the text. A barrel bolt lock found in Savannah and Kayla's closet. Drilled holes on MJG's bedroom door frame that match that lock, so it's locked from the outside. Investigators conclude the door could be locked from the outside. The messages support that. She's not to be out of her room at all. Savannah will take her to the bathroom, lock her door after. Kayla tells investigators that MLG sometimes had to ask through the camera 3 or 4 times a day to leave her room. This means food is controlled, bathroom access is controlled, movement in and out of her room is controlled. Then there's a home camera further. They have a home camera in her room. And that home camera further shows her often in underwear and socks on the floor with mattresses leaned against the wall in the background. This isn't a kid hanging out in her room. It's a child whose world has shrunk to 4 walls. It's a child whose world has shrunk to 4 walls and someone else and also someone else's permission. So again, it's a child whose world has shrunk to 4 walls and someone else's permission. Then you got the punishment of basic needs turns into rewards. I have that also grouped. I saw some texts that relate to that. Text describe discipline like a point system. She earned a bed on the floor, No more movies. She doesn't get that till she behaves. Normal comforts, a bed, a movie, a snack are framed as rewards, not rights. Paired with a locking door, fixed feeding schedules, controlled bathroom trips, demeaning language. See a pattern? They're not just neglecting her, they're breaking her down. They are breaking her down, her will. Again, we saw this with Jacqueline Torres Garcia, with Mimi. No internal breaks, everybody participates. Again, I saw this in a group of texts I was able to put together. Across phones, the complaints show Melissa directing care, using slurs and orchestrating punishment. Let's look at their pictures. So that's Melissa on the left. Savannah calling her stupid, saying, God, I hate her, and using her as a go-to errand runner. Basically, have stupid do it. That's the girl with the glasses. Kayla on the right, echoing the contempt, joking about wanting to hit her or roundhouse kick her and enforcing strict rules. We'll get to Walter Sam Goodman. And then we have NM, the teenage boy, teenager with cancer, being tasked with things like feeding dummy, locking doors, and carrying out instructions. Key little known point. NM is both the victim in the environment and a conscripted enforcer inside it. And what's missing from all these texts? Not once does anyone say we're going too far. Maybe she needs a hospital. We can't talk about her like this. There's no break, no internal whistleblower. There's just only reinforcement. And again, seen it, or we are seeing it. So why do I think these texts will be devastating in court? In court, the messages do several things at once. Prove knowledge. They knew she was so skinny and at risk. Prove intent and attitude. Contempt, hatred, and dehumanization. Prove planning. So you got schedules, punishments, locks. And undermine defenses. We did our best. She refused food. We thought she was fine. Look at those texts. You want to play that out? Let's look at those texts. Let's see what you really thought. Where testimony can be spun, text messages just sit there. Jurors will hear dummy, stupid, God, I hate her. She earned a bed on the floor. And then see a photo of a 35-pound 14-year-old. That gap between how they talk and what she looks like, that will do a lot for the prosecution. It's going to work for them. It's going to work for the prosecution. I want to talk about the final decline. This is August of 2025 when the father calls for help. In mid-August of 2025, everyone in the home sees that MJG is ill. Texts from Melissa include, she's acting weird. She keeps saying she's going to pass out. Only got up because she was throwing up. I can't do it tonight. That's from Melissa Goodman. That's from the stepmom. Despite repeated vomiting, complaints of feeling faint, and visible frailty, no one takes her to urgent care, calls a doctor, calls an advice nurse, calls 911, and the complaint makes it clear her collapse on August 21st wasn't a sudden mystery illness. It was the end stage of years of malnutrition and neglect. The 911 call, which noted that her eyes are open, but she's not responding. So I got at 5:28 p.m. on August 21st, 2025. Walter, here he goes, finally dials 911, tells dispatcher, MJG is 14. She barely eats and looks really skinny. She's autistic. She's been vomiting for days. Her eyes are open, but she's not responding. She's just moaning. So he's setting the narrative. He mentions all her clothes are huge and hanging on her. He had to change her into a pull-up because she urinated on herself. At one point, he says she's been awake for 1 to 3 weeks at a time, a statement that is medically impossible and signals to investigators that his explanations are not reliable. He points a picture of a medically complex autistic child who just doesn't eat, who suddenly gets very sick, but first responders are about to see a different story. So this is what happens when the first responders see her. Basically, she looked like a 6-year-old. And that's quoted from one of the first responders. Remember, she's 14. Officer Smith arrives and sees Walter carrying MJG out of the residence. He notes extreme thinness, ribs, collarbones, and hip bones sharply visible. She looks like a 6 to 8-year-old, not a 14-year-old, and she's in underwear and socks. Paramedics take over. They record blood sugar at 24, dehydration, elevated temperature. I think it was around over 100.8 or something, if I'm correct. And labored conditions. Something about her breathing, too. It's noted on the 911 call that she was having rapid short breath because her belly would go in and out rapidly. One medic reaction to the blood sugar is instinctive, a shock expletive. They curse. I think they say holy shit, and it's redacted. But he says holy, or they say, and it's redacted. And this isn't borderline low, it's life-threatening. Walter tells them he tried giving her wild cherry Pepsi because her mother was diabetic and he thought it might help her. That detail captures the whole medical picture. No doctor, no plan, no medication. Soda as a treatment for a condition he never had properly evaluated. By night's end, she is transferred and stabilized at Children's Wisconsin. She weighs 35 pounds. The hospital now, chapter 9, right? I have all the sound chapters. The hospital, her body wasn't broken. Her environment was. At Children's Wisconsin, doctors write a very different narrative than Walter's. They find severe malnutrition, risk of multi-organ dysfunction, pressure ulcers on her heels, a notable bruise on her forehead, dehydration. But they also find she eats eagerly when given meals, no problem swallowing, no documented autism in prior school records, cognitive testing, broadly age appropriate. Once stabilized, she sleeps normally in the hospital. She rapidly gains weight and strength with regular feeding. At one point, a nurse explains that she'll be getting 3 meals a day. The complaint notes MJG's eyes lit up, and she started listing the food she's excited to eat, including vegetables. Then she says, my dad will be mad because he doesn't like when I eat too much. That one sentence cuts through every defense. She wasn't refusing food. She had learned that eating would get her in trouble. Her body wasn't failing on its own. It was responding to a hostile environment. Now, on August 27, 2025, investigators execute a search warrant at the home. They find a barrel-built lock in Savannah and Kayla's closet, drilled holes on MJG's bedroom door frame that matched the lock. They have an IP camera used to monitor her. Camera footage showing her on the floor of her room in underwear and socks with mattresses leaned against the wall behind her. The complaint also notes statements from a friend who says he told Walter, you can't lock a kid in a bedroom. That's abuse. Walter knew. Between the hidden lock, the camera, the text about locking her door, the friend's warning, you don't just have neglect. You have awareness plus concealment. By the way, he said he had to watch her on camera because she'd have a habit of hurting herself, picking at these mosquito bites and all this other stuff. And the bruise came from her banging her head on the wall. Supposedly what I heard was the bruise came because she may have had a seizure and started banging her head during the seizure. So Walter's charged with 5 counts of chronic child neglect as party to a crime. Counts 1 through 3, chronic neglect of a child, failing to provide care, food, and medical attention resulting in great bodily harm. Each is a Class D felony up to 25 years. Counts 4 and 5 is chronic neglect. So you have education and clothing, causing serious emotional damage. Each is a Class E felony up to 15 years. Total possible exposure, max sentence is 100 years. And I think they're all looking at that right now. It just took a little longer to come after Melissa because it looks like she may have some control here. The counts line up with the evidence. Core, allowing her to deteriorate to 35 pounds. Food is restricting and rationing in the face of obvious malnutrition. Medical, no doctor in 5 years, no help during days of vomiting. Education, years behind academically, no proper schooling. And clothing conditions, repeatedly in underwear and socks, sleeping conditions, and environment that would be humiliating and traumatizing. And remember, that's just Walter's complaint. The 3 women in the home faced their own set of charges. And here's the most daunting contradictions that I saw. The complaint and medical reports punch holes in Walter's narrative at almost every turn. Remember what he said at the very beginning when he called 911, autistic, not eating, all this stuff. He says she's autistic. Her teacher says she wasn't aware of any autism diagnosis. MJG wasn't in special ed. He says she won't eat. Hospital staff say she eats readily with no issues. He says she's awake for 1 to 3 weeks at a time. Hospital shows normal sleep once in a safe environment. He says she's healthy and don't need a doctor. She's 35 pounds with organ risk and severe malnutrition. They say she eats 3 meals a day. Texts show food being planned, rationed, and sometimes withheld. He said this was a sudden illness. Doctors say the signs reflect long-term neglect, not a weekend stomach bug. The more you line up what they say against what the records show, the more it stops looking like confusion. It starts looking like a cover story. I want to talk about the group psychology, 4 adults, 1 narrative. Again, I mentioned this in another episode with, I touched on this yesterday about this case as I was trying to learn it. But also, this is sort of the same dynamic I saw, as I mentioned earlier, with Carla Garcia, Jacqueline Garcia, and Jonathan Nanita. Unfortunately, the girl that they starved, Jacqueline Torres Garcia, Mimi, passed. But you see the same dynamic, how they reinforce each other, how the child becomes the center for the blame. And in that little group, they feel good. They could diffuse responsibility that the child's to blame. But then real world is hitting them. It's hitting them right now. You want to blame the child and take no ownership? Well, we're going to give you a wake-up call now. Because now you're in the real world. You're beyond your little circle of hell. Here's one of the most important and frightening aspects of this case. No one inside the house acted as a brake. Again, guys, looks familiar? Sounds familiar? The Texan statement showed Melissa directing discipline and calling her dummy, Savannah expressing outright hatred and using her as a runner. Have stupid do it. Kayla echoing the contempt and enforcing the schedule. NM, a teenage boy with his own illness, pulled in as an enforcer, asked to lock doors and feed dummy. Walter at the top, legally responsible, controlling her medical and legal status and doing nothing to pull the plug on any of it. Everyone reinforces everyone else. Shared insults, shared frustrations, shared punishment, shared storylines about autism and not eating. There are no texts that say, this is too much, we need help, we're in over our heads. Instead, the group builds a shared reality where MJG is stupid, difficult, and undeserving. And that reality becomes their justification. Neglect becomes culture, not just conduct. It becomes normalized. How does a 14-year-old girl get to 35 pounds? The complaint answers that question, not in one line, but across 41 pages. Years without medical care, years out of school, years of limited food, years of name-calling and humiliation, years of confinement and controlled movement, years of 4 adults reinforcing each other instead of stopping each other. Years without a single mandated reported seeing her. Years without a single mandated reporter seeing her. She didn't go from healthy to 35 pounds in 4 days. She got there over 4 years of being slowly erased. And the moment everything changed, when Walter called 911, he may have believed he could still control the narrative. She's autistic. She doesn't eat. She just suddenly got sick. But the moment first responders walked up to that porch and saw a 35-pound teenager in underwear and socks, the story stopped belonging to the people in that house. It moved into the medic's shocked reaction to a blood sugar of 24. The nurse watching her eyes light up at the promise of 3 meals a day. The investigator finding the lock in the closet. The teacher remembering a chatty, healthy little girl. And the prosecutor reading texts that say, God, I hate her, while showing the jury photos of her body. And there's one more haunting line in the complaint. Medical staff note, concern for prior sexual abuse based on paternal report. Even though STI testing is negative and no sex crime charges have been filed as of the complaint, it's a reminder, even after all we read, there may still be parts of the story we don't fully know yet. So what's the final reality? The good news, if there's any here, is this: she survived. With food, medical care, and sleep, her weight goes up, her organs stabilize, her behavior levels out, her thinking tests broadly age appropriate. She wasn't broken. She was starved, isolated, and controlled. And I want to repeat that again. She wasn't broken. She was starved, isolated, and controlled. And when that stopped, her mind and body start to come back. And that's what the complaint shows us. I wanted to share this story because there was a lot more to it. I did a little yesterday, but I wanted to kind of touch on it again today. Now we have a full grasp of the case. Now we're very interested in how it moves forward. But this, I think, gives us a lot. This gives us the perspective of who these 4 are. But also gives us a perspective of the MJG and how strong she is. It also tells us stuff about homeschooling. It connects, in my mind, to the case in Connecticut with Jacqueline Mimi Torres Garcia. But I would love your thoughts. I mean, my biggest concern is right now, all the stuff we're talking about could still be happening in other homes that we don't know about. And if this is lucky, if this is catching it early and we're lucky, what are we doing? Guys, if you like the content, don't forget I have a link to buy me a cup of coffee or buy me a coffee. It helps me put stuff that helps support the channel. I also have it on the top of my YouTube channel. And as always, guys, stay safe.